down for the count. Boris government would be wiped out by inflation, city bosses' alert comes true. Senior executives in the City of London have expressed alarm at rising inflation and accused the UK government of lacking a credible economic plan to fix mounting problems. British businesses face tough short-term economic challenges from the disruption caused by labour shortages, supply chain problems and spiking energy prices, according to the FT City Network, a forum of more than 50 top bosses. They also voiced concern that an unintended consequence of the pledge by UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson at the recent Conservative Party conference to create a high-wage, high-skill, high-productivity economy, could be to fuel inflation. They also called for a more flexible approach to the restrictive post-Brexit immigration regime and pointed to the need to invest in skills training and technology to boost productivity. Amanda Blanc, chief executive of Aviva, said that inflation was worryingly high, but so far not out of control. She said it was likely that the UK faced a difficult and nervous 6 months. Enforced higher spending on gas and electricity bills will hurt households' ability to spend on discretionary purchases, she added. But we'd expect to see prices falling back from next year, possibly fairly sharply. Before then, it's an uncertain and uncomfortable period ahead. Charlotte Hogg, chief executive of Visa Europe, said it was striking that economic policies were now politically driven. The economic arguments aren't there at all in the way most governments have had in the past, she said. Not for 30 years has inflation been much of a political issue in Britain. Aside from the odd sharp hike in the price of petrol and some food price inflation around the time of the financial crisis, inflation has stayed at lowish levels for so long that not many people can actually recall the alarming and disrupting effects of accelerating inflation. It shreds savings, obviously, distorts economic decisions and generally saps business and consumer confidence. In the race between wages, pensions and benefits on the one side, and the cost of living on the other, it is usually inflation that wins out. We must now consider all these factors, following news that inflation in the UK climbed sharply to 4.2% in October, its highest rate for almost a decade. It all tends to go wrong when inflation gets into the system, like a bad cold turning into pneumonia. When there's a wage price spiral, costs go up and workers demand more pay. That's when inflation has become endemic, and harder to tame. The signs on that are mixed, but the otherwise good news about the success of the furlough scheme and relatively low unemployment is tempered by suggestions that some of the conditions for such a spiral may be building up. There have certainly been some marked upward adjustments in pay rates in certain occupations, though not too much should be made of such sectoral movements. Politically, the government can't really win either way. If nothing is done about inflation, it will surely accelerate and make people poorer, though the rich, who tend to own substantial real assets, such as property, land and shares, are less affected. If the bank has to push rates far higher, back to the kind of levels once thought normal, say 4% or more, then we'll also feel the squeeze. Businesses will go bust, jobs will be lost and people will again be poorer. Fragile business and consumer confidence, more expensive mortgages, higher house prices and rents, inflation and stagnant living standards tend to make governments unpopular, and things are set to get worse. Uniquely among the major economies, the UK has increased barriers to trade with its largest markets, which is already hampering the post-COVID recovery. It will also depress private sector investment, and thus productivity and wage rises in the coming years. As recent news on HS2 and levelling up make clear, the government's infrastructure spending splurge seems to be running out of momentum almost before it's started. That, too, will make life tougher, especially in the red wall seats the Tories made such extravagant promises to.